Hey guys, tonight we slip back, way back, into a time when the world itself felt like a long exhaled breath made of frost. Imagine opening your eyes beneath a sky so pale it looks almost metallic, the kind of cold blue that makes your eyelashes ache. You exhale, and the air turns to fog instantly, curling around your face like a ghost that doesn't want to leave. This is the Ice Age, the original winter. No escape button, no hot cocoa, just the endless whisper of snow and the rattle of wind against ice-crusted plains. You probably wouldn't survive this, but that's fine. Tonight, you don't have to. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand on a stretch of tundra where even time feels frozen. Your boots, imaginary though they are, crunch through snow that hides the bones of mammoths and the footprints of people who lived tens of thousands of years before you. These early humans weren't explorers, they were survivors. Every day was an argument with nature about who got to keep their warmth a little longer. The air burns your lungs, your nose sticks together when you breathe in, and even the sunlight feels brittle, like it might shatter if you stare too long. You pull an animal pelt tighter around your shoulders. It smells faintly of smoke, sweat, and survival. Somewhere in the distance, a small group of hunter-gatherers trudges across the horizon. They're wrapped in layers of fur stitched with sinew, their faces raw and red from wind. You imagine what it takes to live here. No houses, no heaters, no quick grocery runs, just instinct, teamwork, and an almost spiritual obsession with heat. Historians still argue whether the last ice age peaked about 20 or 25,000 years ago, but what's certain is this. The cold wasn't just a season, it was an identity. Everything humans did, where they lived, what they ate, how they dreamed, was built around one desperate goal: staying warm long enough to see spring. The tundra hums with silence. Somewhere underfoot, permafrost hides layers of ancient life. Roots, seeds, even bacteria still asleep after millennia. Above ground, the landscape feels both huge and claustrophobic. The horizon, an unbroken loop of white. You can almost hear the low groan of glaciers shifting in the distance, like the earth grinding its teeth. But people found ways to adapt. Some followed herds of reindeer and woolly mammoths, chasing food and warmth across continents. Others built temporary shelters from bone and hide, turning death itself into architecture. They learned to read the wind, to sense storms before the clouds even formed. You can picture them standing over a fire of smoldering peat, rubbing their hands and laughing quietly about some small triumph, maybe a caught fish, maybe a story shared to distract from frostbite. And while you listen to the wind, you realize that warmth back then wasn't just temperature, it was life. Every fire sparked meant survival. Every pelt meant protection. And every night survived meant a chance to see the sun again, even if it was only a pale coin rolling across a silver sky. Here's a quirky thought historians like to toss around. Maybe humans learned to dance just to stay warm. Picture a ring of people stomping around a fire, laughing, shaking their limbs, half in rhythm and half in panic. It's both survival and celebration, a mix that probably still lingers in every wedding reception today. Some archaeologists even suggest rhythmic movement, could have been a way to strengthen social bonds because nothing says, "I trust you," like not freezing together. A snowflake lands on your sleeve, delicate as a spider's web. You watch it melt slowly from your body heat and think of how fragile warmth really is. One bad day, a missed hunt, a broken tool, and it could all end. The Ice Age didn't forgive mistakes easily, and yet, somehow, humans didn't just endure it, they learned from it. The cold sculpted their ingenuity, forcing them to create tools, clothing, and rituals that turned mere survival into culture. The world's first sparks of art, community, and belief systems probably flickered beside the same campfires that kept people alive. You glance up again at clouds heavy with more snow and think about how small you'd feel here, a lone figure in an ancient, frozen sea. Still, there's comfort in imagining those early people out there, scattered, yes, but connected by the same quiet desperation you feel when you lose Wi-Fi in winter. Only theirs actually mattered. Somewhere, in a nearby valley, smoke rises from a cluster of fires. Families huddle close, children bundled in fur, elders whispering advice that sounds half like myth and half like science. You can almost hear them say, "Keep moving, keep the fire fed, don't let the night win." The Ice Age was relentless, but so were they. Historians still argue whether these humans, Neanderthals, early Homo sapiens, coexisted peacefully or not. Some say they shared tools and techniques. Others imagine fierce competition for food and shelter. But perhaps they shared something subtler. The same awe at firelight against snow, the same relief when fingers stopped aching. Warmth was universal, even when language wasn't. The wind shifts again, bringing with it the faint scent of pine tar and burning moss. You pull your fur tighter, listening as the distant fires crackle like heartbeat echoes. Somewhere out there, a child laughs, proof that even in the coldest chapter of Earth's history, joy could still find a way to exist. You step closer to the imagined campfire, feeling the radiant glow lick against your frozen cheeks. The flames rise, dance, and split the darkness into shades of gold. For a moment, the Ice Age feels less like a punishment and more like a test of patience, a slow, frozen meditation on what it means to be alive. And as the night settles deeper, you realize that every time humanity builds a campfire, lights a candle, or turns on a heater, it's echoing this same ancient ritual, one long thread of defiance stretching from the tundra to your bedside lamp. The cold hums beneath the silence, but for now, you're warm enough to keep listening. You trudge onward through the snow until the wind carries the smell of something ancient and strange. Smoke, animal fat, and damp earth. Ahead, huddled in a hollow of the frozen plain, are shelters unlike anything you've ever seen. They look like the bones of giants stitched together by wind and willpower. Mammoth ribs rise from the ground in sweeping arcs, lashed with sinew, draped in hide, sealed with clay and moss. You step closer, and warmth breathes faintly from within. The people inside have built homes out of death itself. When the great beasts fell, their tusks and skulls became walls. Their hides became roofs. You crouch and slip through a flap of fur, and for a moment the world outside vanishes, the screaming wind, the endless white. Inside, the air smells of tallow smoke and cooked roots. It's dim, amber-lit, and unexpectedly cozy. Someone laughs softly from the shadows, a low rumble that vibrates through the cold air like an old song. Historians still argue whether Ice Age shelters were seasonal or permanent, but the evidence, rings of post holes, circles of bones, soot-stained hearths, suggests a certain stubborn permanence. These weren't just camps. They were homes made by people who refused to freeze. In places like Mezhyrish in Ukraine, entire villages of mammoth-bone huts have been unearthed, proof that architecture was already an act of defiance. Each curved rib or tusk in those structures tells a story of ingenuity born from desperation. You run your fingers along one of those massive bones. It's smooth, cold, and heavier than a sense of time itself. Imagine the work it took, hunting, dragging, arranging, sealing gaps with mud or moss, then layering hides thick enough to trap the heat of a single fire. You'd think it would never work, but inside, the temperature could rise dramatically, enough to thaw your toes, enough to survive, enough to dream. A child scurries past you carrying a basket woven from grass and sinew. She ducks near the central fire, adding a few smoldering twigs, her hair haloed in sparks. The flame dances upward, illuminating walls decorated with charcoal drawings, lines of reindeer, spirals, strange symbols that look halfway between art and prayer. Maybe those drawings weren't decoration at all, but a kind of insulation for the soul. When you spend most of your life in darkness and frost, even imagination becomes a survival tool. Some researchers think these huts might have included clever insulation tricks, layers of grass, snow packed around the outside, even double walls to trap air. The Ice Age had its engineers, though they never wrote blueprints. They measured success by whether the fire stayed lit through the night. A fringe theory, one of those half-serious, half-delightful ideas, suggests that humans sometimes shared these shelters with tamed wolves, using their body heat as living radiators. Picture that. A family asleep under hides, fire flickering low, wolves curled at their feet, all breathing in sync, a collective resistance to extinction. Whether or not that happened, you can almost feel the comfort it promises. You settle against the wall, the hum of life around you, a rhythmic crackle of fire, the occasional drip of melted snow, the quiet sound of skin against fur as someone adjusts a blanket. It's the kind of silence modern life rarely allows. The only thing you can hear clearly is your own heartbeat, steady as the ancient rhythm of survival. The cold doesn't vanish here. It lingers in corners, seeps through gaps. But it's bearable. The difference between dying and living could be just a few degrees, a layer of hide, a thicker pile of grass to sleep on. And as you sit, the concept of home starts to shift. It's no longer about walls or furniture. It's a circle of safety carved out from chaos. You glance around and realize that every detail serves the same purpose: preservation. Meat strips hang near the ceiling where the smoke keeps insects away. Tools are stacked carefully against the walls: flint scrapers, antler needles, bone awls. Everything has a place, and every place has a warmth at its center. Outside, the wind howls like something alive, battering against the hides. Inside, someone hums a low tune, the kind of melody that could lull a mammoth to sleep. Maybe it's a lullaby, maybe it's a prayer, maybe it's both. Historians still argue whether people at this time had a concept of community like we do, but it's hard to imagine they didn't. You can almost see it in the way they arrange their dwellings, in clusters, not in isolation. Fires close enough that smoke mingles, but far enough that a single spark won't burn the entire village down. You picture families stepping out into the dawn, checking on neighbors, sharing food, trading stories, proof that warmth wasn't just physical, but social. A quirkier theory claims that the round shape of many Ice Age shelters wasn't just practical, it mirrored something spiritual. Circles meant continuity, unity, the cycle of life and death. Living inside a circle, near a fire, under a round dome of sky, it connected people to the rhythms of nature. Maybe that's why we still find round huts comforting today. From yurts to igloos to planetariums, the smoke inside thickens a little, stinging your eyes. Someone adjusts the flap to let in air, and a brief gust of cold rushes through, kissing your skin with the reminder of what waits outside. Then it's gone again, swallowed by the firelight. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the warmth soak in, your mind drifting to how much effort went into every scrap of comfort in this age. You can't help but smile when a child giggles as a spark lands on his mother's fur sleeve. She brushes it off, scolding softly, but there's laughter in her voice. Even here, in the grip of eternal winter, humor survives. Maybe that's the real insulation, laughter wrapped around fear like fur on flesh. It's strange to think that thousands of years later, people would build mansions, castles, skyscrapers, all from the same impulse. Keep the cold out, keep the warmth in. Every thermostat, every insulated wall, every heated blanket, an echo of this bone hut. Humans never stopped chasing comfort, they just upgraded the materials. As night deepens, the fire dwindles to embers, and a few figures lie down, wrapped in furs. You do too, sinking into the warmth of grass bedding, the scent of smoke and musk. Outside, the wind sighs against the mammoth bones, but inside, you're safe, for now. You can almost hear the ancestors whisper, as if the walls themselves remember every shiver and every victory. The fire pops once, throwing sparks toward the ceiling, and you think, warmth is never free. It's earned every single night, and maybe that's what makes it feel so good. You wake to the hiss of wind pushing against hide walls, the air heavy with ash and sleep. The fire in the center has collapsed into a bed of embers, glowing faintly like the last heartbeat of a dying sun. You stretch your hands toward it, but the warmth barely reaches. It's not enough, not yet. You need flame, not memory. And in the Ice Age, keeping that flame alive is everything. You kneel beside the coals, the chill biting into your knees. One breath too hard and you could scatter the embers. One breath too soft and they might fade out completely. You blow gently, whispering encouragement like it's a living thing. The coals pulse red, then orange, then brighter still. Smoke curls upward, hesitant but hopeful. A few dry twigs catch, and soon the soft crackle of rekindled fire fills the hut. You've just recreated one of the most sacred moments in human history, the resurrection of warmth. Historians still argue whether early humans mastered fire-making everywhere at once, or if they mostly guarded ancient embers from lightning strikes. Either way, fire was no casual tool, it was treasure. Tribes carried it carefully in smoldering bundles of moss or fungus, wrapped in hide, keeping it alive through days of travel. Losing it meant disaster. You couldn't just start over. There were no matches, no lighters, no backup plan. Outside, you can almost see them. Two figures crouched behind a boulder, hunched against the wind. One strikes flint against pyrite, showering sparks into a nest of dry grass. The other shields the kindling with cupped hands, holding their breath like priests at an altar. The spark catches, the flame rises, and for a second, the entire world glows with hope. The mainstream fact: fire wasn't only for warmth. It hardened wooden spears, cooked food for better digestion, and kept predators away. The night, once ruled by teeth and eyes that glowed in the dark, suddenly belonged to humans. That's when imagination began to stretch past fear. Around these flames, language may have evolved, stories took root, and plans were made. Civilization, in its embryonic form, was born from smoke and flickering light. A quirkier detail, archaeologists once found a piece of tinder fungus that might have been used to carry live embers for days. It's like a prehistoric Zippo, except you had to feed it with breath and patience instead of lighter fluid. Imagine walking through snow while guarding a glowing clump of fungus, praying it doesn't die before the next night. It's the original power bank, except instead of charging your phone, it charged your existence. Inside your bone hut, you feed the new fire with a handful of sticks. It sighs and expands, shadows pulsing against the curved walls. The people around you stir, muttering sleepily. Someone tosses a chunk of dried dung into the flames. It burns surprisingly well, sending up a sweet grassy scent that isn't exactly pleasant but feels comforting all the same. Fuel was anything you could find: wood, peat, dung, even bones. Nothing was wasted, not when the cold could peel your soul from your body overnight. Historians still argue whether Ice Age fires were constant or relit daily. Some camps appear to have maintained a central hearth for months, even years, suggesting that tending flame became a communal duty. Picture an ancestor's version of a night shift, staying awake while others slept, poking the fire, muttering to the spirits, and maybe sneaking a roasted marrow bone when nobody was looking. The flames climb higher now, licking the air with orange tongues. You hold your hands closer, palms out, feeling life trickle back into your fingers. It's easy to forget that warmth wasn't just luxury, it was control. For the first time, humans could push back against nature's dominance. Fire made night negotiable. It made the wild manageable. It made the impossible, survival, possible. But there's also danger in it. Step outside the hut, and you'll find a circle of scorched snow where someone's experiment went wrong. Maybe the hides caught. Maybe a gust of wind scattered embers into the dry grass. One mistake, and everything you built could vanish in smoke. That's the paradox of warmth. It saves you until it burns you. The group outside starts to gather wood. You join them, trudging through knee-deep snow to a nearby grove where twisted trees jut like black ribs against the sky. Bark splits under your knife, releasing the faint scent of resin. Your breath fogs as you drag logs back, your muscles aching but your body grateful for movement. Every trip between fire and cold is a reminder. Warmth is always temporary. It demands tending, vigilance, worship. One man you pass carries a stone bowl filled with glowing coals, his face set in concentration. You nod at him, and he nods back. No words, just shared understanding. Fire is community. The warmth you feel now once belonged to him, and before him, to someone else. It's the original chain of human connection, passed hand to hand, hut to hut, heart to heart. There's a fringe idea among anthropologists that early humans might have used fire for social signaling. Columns of smoke across valleys, bonfires marking migration routes. You can almost imagine it. Flickers of light across a frozen horizon like constellations made of fire, connecting distant tribes in a silent, glowing network. Long before the internet, there was the light of survival stretching from camp to camp. Back in your shelter, the flames have mellowed into a steady rhythm. Someone is roasting strips of meat, fat sizzling and popping. The smell fills the space, thick and rich, and for a moment you forget the cold entirely. You taste salt, ash, and gratitude. The crackle of fire feels like conversation even when nobody speaks. You glance into the flames and see shapes that don't exist. Faces, animals, maybe the shadow of your own thoughts. It's hypnotic, ancient, the same dance your ancestors watched when they invented myth, the same rhythm that made them wonder what lay beyond the stars. The night creeps in again, but this time you don't fear it. The hut glows from within, a lantern in an endless storm. You can hear faint laughter outside, someone joking about how the smoke makes their hair smell like roasted mammoth. Humor, once again, refuses to die. Maybe that's why we still tell jokes around campfires. It's a tradition as old as survival itself. You feed the fire one last stick before curling up on the furs. The warmth settles into your bones, slow and deep. Outside, the wind may still be carving the world to ice, but inside, you've carved out a pocket of defiance. And as you drift toward sleep, you realize that the true miracle of the Ice Age isn't fire itself. It's the decision to keep it burning. The fire burns low again by morning, but this time the cold doesn't bite quite as sharply. Your body remembers warmth now. It clings to it, hoards it. You rise slowly, stretching under layers of hide, and watch the others dressing for the day, wrapping themselves in what looks like a traveling zoo of fur, leather, and bone jewelry. You're about to learn what might be the oldest human fashion show on Earth, though runway lights have been replaced with firelight, and the stakes are survival, not style points. You step outside and immediately feel the wind snake through every gap in your clothing. The cold is merciless, the kind that slips through your skin and rearranges your soul. You pull your cloak tighter, the fur stiff with frost. Somewhere in the distance, a hunter adjusts the straps on his boots. Fur on the inside, rawhide on the outside, ingeniously designed to keep both snow and sanity out. These aren't just outfits, they're engineering marvels. Historians still argue whether early humans first wore clothing for warmth or modesty, but out here the answer is obvious. No one cared about modesty when their eyebrows were freezing off. What mattered was trapping body heat, every fiber, every seam, every decision. The art of dressing became a form of survival science. You watch as one woman works on a tunic by the fire, her fingers moving fast and practiced. The thread isn't thread at all, it's sinew, stripped and softened, strong as modern nylon. Her needle is a sliver of bone, polished smooth by use. She stitches fur to leather, layering hide so the softer side touches skin, the coarser side faces the cold. It's tactile wisdom, learned over generations of trial and near-fatal error. In the background, someone jokes that they're starting a new fashion trend, the mammoth look. The group laughs. Even in a world of frostbite and famine, humor has its place. You realize laughter has another use here. It warms the body, even if only for a moment. Archaeologists have found awls, scrapers, and needles in Ice Age sites across Eurasia. Some so delicately made you'd think they belonged to a tailor in Paris rather than a hunter on the steppe. Mainstream evidence points to people wearing layered outfits, inner shirts of soft hide, outer cloaks of fur, leggings bound with sinew cords, every item tailored precisely for movement and warmth. Fashion didn't start on runways. It started beside a fire with someone muttering, "This drafty hide is killing me." A quirkier discovery. Some cave paintings suggest people added decorative touches even then, fringes, beads, and dyed leather. Maybe warmth wasn't enough. Maybe humans have always needed to feel beautiful, even when covered in soot. Imagine spending days sewing tiny shells onto your cloak just to look slightly cooler or warmer, depending on your priorities. You can almost hear a prehistoric version of, "Oh, this? Just something I killed myself." The wind outside shifts, bringing snow that drifts like powdered glass. You step toward the entrance and peek out. Hunters are preparing for the day, pulling on hoods lined with wolf fur, faces framed in frost. The snow squeaks underfoot, a sound that exists only in deep cold. You wrap your own hood tighter and feel how it muffles sound, how it turns your breath into little puffs of steam trapped inside the fur. The sensation is oddly comforting, like wearing your own personal cave. Historians still argue whether these clothes were invented independently by different groups or spread through trade and migration. Some say the innovation followed the cold, radiating out as the glaciers advanced. Others believe humans shared techniques across tribes, swapping sewing tricks along with stone tools. Either way, the knowledge spread faster than you'd think possible without TikTok tutorials. One fringe idea claims that early humans learned layering from watching animals. You picture someone observing how reindeer have hollow hair that traps air, then trying to replicate that effect by layering hides with grass in between. It's weirdly plausible. After all, humans have always been professional copycats of nature. You walk further into camp, where drying racks hold a macabre collection of pelts: fox, hare, reindeer, maybe even the odd cave lion. Each one represents not just warmth, but risk. Every hunt a gamble. You can almost feel the gratitude in the way they treat the materials. Nothing wasted, every scrap turned into something useful. Gloves, straps, baby swaddles, even the smell of tanning hides. A rank mix of smoke, fat, and fermented brains means life. A woman waves you over grinning and hands you a half-finished pair of mittens. The fur is soft, the seams tight. You slip your hands inside, and the warmth is instant, luxurious. For a moment, you could almost forget the ice age outside. "Don't lose them," she says with a wink, "or you'll be digging mammoth dung with your bare hands." You laugh, but the joke carries truth. Every lost item was a potential death sentence. By midday, the group moves out to hunt. You follow, noticing how everyone's gear has a specific rhythm. Boots crunch evenly, hoods turn together, nothing flaps or catches wind. Every sound matters. You see how the layers breathe. Steam rises when they pause, then freezes instantly when they move again. It's a choreography of survival, half fashion, half physics. When they rest, you notice something else: the sharing of warmth. A hunter wraps his arm around a younger companion, not out of sentiment, but to conserve heat. Another offers his fur cloak for a few minutes, a silent transaction of generosity. Warmth, you realize, was also currency. Those who could keep others warm gained loyalty, friendship, maybe even love. Later, back at camp, you sit by the fire and strip snow from your clothes. Droplets hiss as they hit the coals. You hang your cloak on a wooden frame, watching the steam rise like ghosts. The smell of smoke seeps into every fiber, every hair. You'll never really get it out, but you don't mind. It's the smell of survival, and somewhere deep down, your brain finds it comforting. Proof that you're not freezing. The debate continues among scholars about when humans first started tanning hides properly, turning them soft and waterproof. Some think it began around this period, others push it back further. Either way, It's clear that the moment humans learned to soften skins was the moment they stopped merely enduring the cold and started mastering it. You glance at the others, some still sewing, some dozing near the fire, one humming a song that feels both familiar and alien. The rhythm, the low repetition, sounds like breath itself. Maybe it's just a way to pass time, or maybe, as some anthropologists suspect, song itself evolved around the fire as a way to coordinate work and calm fear. You pull your newly dried cloak around your shoulders. It's heavy, warm, and slightly itchy, but it feels like armor. The ice age may still be roaring outside, but you're wrapped in invention. Thousands of tiny decisions made by ancestors who refused to surrender to frost. As the firelight ripples across the hides, you can almost see the lineage. Every coat, every blanket, every sweater that would follow from cave fur to cashmere. And you think, as your eyelids grow heavy, fashion started with fear, and comfort was the first luxury humanity ever invented. The night returns, thick and heavy as mammoth hide, and you find yourself lying close to the fire, half asleep. The flames flicker low, painting the curved ceiling in trembling gold. But tonight, you notice something new, a deep, rhythmic sound outside, like thunder that breathes. It's the kind of noise you don't want to identify. Then you realize it's not thunder at all. It's the slow, weighty steps of a mammoth moving near the camp. The ground seems to hum under its weight. You rise quietly, heart hammering against your ribs. The others are awake too, their faces pale in the firelight. Nobody panics, though. There's awe here, and maybe something like reverence. After all, this creature is both friend and foe, provider and potential destroyer. And strangely enough, in this frozen world, it's also your bedtime companion. You push aside the hide flap and step into the night. The wind hits you like a slap, but you barely feel it because your eyes are fixed on the silhouette ahead, massive, shaggy, crowned with curved tusks that gleam faintly in the moonlight. Steam pours from its nostrils, twisting like smoke. A mammoth. Close enough that you can smell the earthy musk of its fur, thick with ice and dust. Historians still argue whether early humans hunted these giants frequently or sparingly. Some evidence, massive bone heaps, flint-tipped spears embedded in tusks, suggests organized hunts. Others believe people mostly scavenged the fallen ones, taking advantage of beasts brought down by age or misfortune. Either way, the mammoth was a supermarket, a construction site, and a furnace all in one. Meat for food, bone for tools, hide for warmth, fat for lamps. Every piece mattered, but tonight, nobody's hunting. They're watching, still as frost-bitten statues. The mammoth grazes on the sparse, brittle grass, snow caked to its legs. It exhales clouds of warmth into the frozen dark, and you feel that same heat on your face, faint but real. The animal itself radiates comfort, the first space heater ever designed by nature. There's a whisper beside you. A hunter murmurs something you can't quite catch, a mix of words and breath, half prayer, half gratitude. You wonder if this is ritual or habit. Some Ice Age tribes, scholars think, viewed mammoths as sacred, symbols of strength and endurance. To kill one was both blessing and burden, a transaction with the gods of survival. A fringe theory suggests that early humans may have used the body heat of freshly killed animals for warmth, crawling inside the cavity of a mammoth or reindeer to escape the cold. It sounds grim, but it makes practical sense. Warmth was warmth, no matter how macabre the source. You try not to picture it, But your brain can't help it. The steam, the dark, the desperate relief. It's not the kind of bedtime story Disney would tell, but it's real. The mammoth shifts, its enormous tusks scraping the ice with a sound like metal on stone. The firelight flickers across its fur, revealing shades of copper and shadow. It's strange how alive it feels, like the world's slowest moving miracle. You realize how dependent humanity was on creatures like this, how entire ecosystems of survival orbited their existence. When the mammoths vanished, so too did many of the comforts people had come to rely on. You step closer, too close perhaps. The mammoth turns its head, one dark eye gleaming with alien calm. For a second, the line between fear and fascination blurs. You can almost sense the weight of history pressing down, this shared moment between two beings who need warmth to live. Then, with a low snort, it moves on, disappearing into the swirling snow like a fading dream. The silence afterward feels deeper than before. Someone exhales slowly. Another tosses more fuel on the fire. You duck back inside, heart still racing, but the warmth of the shelter feels different now, more precious, more deliberate. You curl near the flames, imagining the beasts sleeping outside in their herds, the earth itself a frozen blanket stretched over all of you. Historians still argue whether humans ever truly domesticated these Ice Age giants. Some suggest that smaller mammoth species may have been tamed briefly, used for hauling or companionship before extinction took them. There's no hard proof, just whispers, speculation, and a few petroglyphs that look suspiciously like a man walking beside a woolly shadow. But in a way, humans didn't need to domesticate them. They coexisted, a fragile peace built on shared endurance. Mammoths knew the migration routes. Humans followed. The animals dug through snow for roots, leaving scraps humans scavenged. It was less master and servant, more roommates in an apartment with really bad heating. A quirkier discovery from Siberia reveals traces of what might have been mammoth fat lamps, shells filled with melted fat, burning steady for hours. The smell, reportedly awful, but when the world outside could kill you in an hour, a bad-smelling flame was a luxury. You imagine one flickering beside you now, casting the same amber light across ancient faces, their eyes half closed, the exhaustion of the cold momentarily forgotten. Someone murmurs a story, a legend about how the mammoths hold up the earth beneath their tusks, and when one shakes off the snow, the ground trembles. You smile in the dim light. Maybe that's where the first bedtime stories came from. People huddled together, trying to explain the rumble of distant herds or the groan of shifting ice. Even then, storytelling was a form of warmth. Words spun into blankets for the mind. The fire crackles softly, and the air inside fills with heat that smells faintly of rendered fat and smoke. You close your eyes and let the rhythm of breathing lull you, humans and mammoths alike exhaling fog into the same night. It's a fragile balance, but it works. Outside, the herd moves on, their footprints filling slowly with drifting snow. In the morning, only the tracks will remain, circles, lines, and swirls pressed into the frozen earth. Thousands of years later, someone will find them and try to imagine this moment, a human, barely clothed in stitched hides, standing near a creature that could crush them with a single step, and yet neither flinching nor fleeing, just sharing heat under the same indifferent stars. You nestle closer to the fire, and your thoughts drift. You picture the mammoths sleeping in a ring, calves nestled between adults, snow gathering on their backs. Maybe they dream, too, of warmer lands, of endless grass, of a world without humans watching from the shadows. The irony isn't lost on you. Both species are clinging to the same fragile thread of warmth, destined to vanish in time. Still, tonight, you both endure, and that's enough. By morning, the world has turned silver. The snow crusts everything, the huts, the horizon, even the air seems powdered with it. Your breath hangs heavy as fog. You pull your cloak tighter and step outside to join the small line of figures already trudging toward the hunting grounds. It's time to talk about the one thing that truly kept Ice Age people alive: food. Not gourmet, not glamorous, just warm, fatty, calorie-dense fuel for the living furnace that is your freezing body. Your stomach growls even before the smell hits: roasted marrow, faintly smoky, faintly sweet. Someone has been up early, tending the fire and stirring a pot hung from a wooden tripod. Inside, chunks of meat bubble in a broth so thick it could double as glue. You crouch beside it, inhaling deeply. This, you realize, isn't just breakfast. It's central heating you can eat. Historians still argue whether Ice Age humans were primarily hunters or opportunistic scavengers. The evidence points both ways. Spears and projectile points say hunter. Mammoth carcasses with cut marks say scavenger. But the real answer might be both. In a world where winter never truly ended, you couldn't afford to specialize. You ate what you could catch, and sometimes what others, wolves, saber-tooths, or nature, left behind. You watch as the group begins to divide the morning meal. The meat is reindeer, stringy but rich in fat. The hunters chew slowly, eyes half closed, savoring warmth more than taste. The broth gets passed around in wooden bowls, each sip sending heat deep into your chest. The flavor is earthy, smoky, with the faint tang of minerals. It's not delicious exactly, but it's life distilled into liquid form. And calories mattered. The average Ice Age adult burned far more energy than modern humans just to stay alive. To hunt, you needed strength. To sleep, you needed reserves. Every gram of fat was precious, biological insulation against the next cold snap. The fattier the meat, the more prized it became. Even marrow, the stuff inside bones, was a delicacy worth cracking skulls for. A quirky detail: archaeologists found that some Ice Age groups made something like proto-pemmican, a mix of dried meat, fat, and berries mashed into a compact brick. Portable, calorie-rich, and, let's be honest, probably disgusting. But it didn't freeze solid and could last for weeks. Think of it as the world's first energy bar, minus the branding and protein powder hype. You join a pair of hunters prepping tools for the day's expedition. They're sharpening flint blades, testing points, checking sinew lashings. The tools are crude but effective, extensions of muscle and will. You ask one how far they'll travel today, and he shrugs. As far as the food goes, the casualness in his tone carries the weight of truth. Distance means nothing when hunger is chasing you. The wind picks up as you follow them out. Snow stings your cheeks, the kind of sting that feels personal. You move in a rhythm. Step, breathe, step, breathe, your body adapting to the monotony of cold and movement. The horizon stretches blankly, broken only by low hills and the occasional line of dark trees. Somewhere out there, herds of reindeer or bison graze, their noses buried in snow, seeking grass that barely exists. Historians still argue about how far these hunters ranged, but some evidence shows migration routes spanning hundreds of miles. Imagine walking across half a continent just to find dinner. Every step fueled by last night's bone broth and the hope of tomorrow's meal. After hours of trudging, the lead hunter halts, raising a hand. Everyone freezes, literally and figuratively. You follow his gaze and spot them. A small herd of woolly reindeer moving slowly along a ridge. Their breath misting in the pale air, the hunters begin their silent choreography. You crouch, heartbeat syncing with theirs, every movement deliberate. The first throw is quick, almost graceful, a spear arcing through the air like a comet. It lands true. The herd scatters, but one animal stumbles, the snow blooming red around it. The sound it makes is soft, almost human. You feel the mix of triumph and sorrow that has haunted every hunter since time began. They move quickly, ending the suffering, then begin the work. Skinning, gutting, dividing. The smell of blood fills the air, sharp and metallic. Steam rises from the carcass, an eerie contrast to the snow. For a moment, the warmth of life literally escapes into the sky. A fringe idea suggests that humans used fresh hides as makeshift heaters, wrapping them around their bodies before the warmth faded. It's grimly practical. The line between necessity and taboo didn't exist yet. If it could save you from frostbite, it was fair game. You help carry back the meat, wrapped in hides, heavy but satisfying. By the time you return to camp, your muscles ache in that good alive way. The others cheer quietly, not joy exactly, but relief. The fire roars again, fueled by wood and gratitude. Soon, the smell of roasting meat fills the air. Fat drips into the flames, hissing like applause. Someone jokes about inventing mammoth-flavored soup of the day. Another hums a tune that might once have been a chant. You can't tell whether it's song or hunger talking. Dinner is a communal event. Everyone sits close, bowls in hand, firelight flickering on their faces. You eat slowly, savoring the warmth that spreads through your limbs. The conversation drifts between laughter, silence, and the crackle of wood. You realize that in this world, every meal is a celebration, not of excess, but of endurance. Historians still argue whether Ice Age diets were as healthy as modern ones. Some claim the high-fat, high-protein intake kept them strong. Others note signs of vitamin deficiency. But when you're living on the edge of extinction, balance isn't the goal. Survival is. As the night wears on, the hunters tell stories of the day's catch. One brags he could smell the reindeer before he saw it. Another insists the mammoths can sense when someone is hungry. The stories blur into myth, the line between memory and magic melting like fat in a pan. You sit back, stomach full, warmth blooming inside. The firelight dances on the walls of the hut, the shadows moving like ancient spirits. You think about how hunger has always driven humanity forward, how every innovation, every migration, every act of courage probably began with an empty stomach. Outside, the snow keeps falling, soft and steady. The cold presses against the walls, patient and eternal. But inside, you're warm, full, and safe. For now, the Ice Age can wait. You wake before dawn to the sound of quiet bustle. There's movement outside the shelter, low voices, the dull thud of packs being loaded, the clink of stone tools against bone. The air smells of smoke and grease. And when you peek through the hide flap, you see them, a small group readying for travel across the white expanse. Not for hunting this time, for trading. It's easy to forget that even in the Ice Age, when glaciers ruled the world and mammoths roamed the plains, people were already connected by invisible threads of exchange. You pull your furs tighter and join them, watching as they roll bundles of dried meat, sinew, shells, and flint into leather satchels. One man checks a pouch of tiny ivory beads, counting carefully. Each bead gleams faintly like a drop of frozen moonlight. Historians still argue whether Ice Age trade networks were regional or continental, but evidence suggests they stretched astonishingly far. Baltic amber found in Central Europe, obsidian tools from distant mountains, marine shells buried hundreds of miles from the sea, all proof that the cold couldn't freeze human curiosity. Trade, even then, meant warmth, a way to get what your own land denied you. You step out into the gray morning. The world looks endless, flat plains broken by ridges of ice, distant shapes of hills blurred by frost. The traders move in single file, snow crunching under their mammoth hide boots. You follow, feeling your face sting as the wind sneaks into every gap. This journey isn't glamorous. It's endurance wrapped in motion, but it's also civilization in embryo. The group travels light but clever. Sleds made of curved bones drag behind, gliding easily over the snow. One woman hums softly as she walks, the sound lost quickly in the wind. It's not for company, really. It's to keep rhythm, to keep moving when your body threatens to give up. You realize how fragile this caravan is, a handful of people crossing a world that barely wants them alive. Midday brings a stop at a frozen river. The traders kneel, scraping away ice to fill leather skins with water. One breaks out a small fire-starting kit, flint, pyrite, a wisp of dried moss. The spark catches, the flame trembles. Soon steam curls from a pot of melting snow. You sit close, thawing your fingers. There's laughter now, brief but genuine, the sound of people pretending they're not surrounded by infinite cold. A mainstream fact. Trade in this era wasn't just about goods. It was about knowledge, techniques, survival strategies, stories, all passed hand to hand like currency. One tribe's trick for preserving fat became another's way of surviving winter. Even languages bled together through barter and marriage. Every trade route was also a story route, carrying fragments of culture across frozen continents. A quirkier find in certain sites. Archaeologists have uncovered small sculptures and beads made of mammoth ivory, too delicate to be tools, too ornate to be simple decoration. Some believe these were tokens of exchange, ancient IOUs or gifts meant to secure peace between tribes. You imagine handing one of those to a stranger after days of walking through endless snow, silently saying, "I come in warmth, not war." By evening, the group reaches a ridge overlooking another camp. Smoke rises from low shelters in the valley below. You can hear the faint sound of barking, dogs maybe, or wolves, tamed enough to guard the outskirts. The traders wave cloth signals to announce their arrival. Moments later, figures emerge from the snow to greet them, carrying bundles of their own. The meeting feels ceremonial, almost sacred. Historians still argue whether Ice Age diplomacy existed in any formal sense. But the careful spacing, the exchange of gestures, the way nobody rushes forward, it's negotiation, instinctively understood. The two groups meet halfway, between camps, where neutrality lies in the middle of frozen ground. The traders unwrap their goods. Flint blades gleam, shells rattle softly. Cured meat gives off a faint aroma of smoke. The other group lays out what they've brought. Bright ochre pigment, soft hides, bundles of herbs. The trade begins, quiet and deliberate. You notice how everyone's eyes flicker to the fire pit being built nearby. It's the true center of the exchange. Firelight means safety, and no one argues in the circle of warmth. A fringe theory says some of the earliest art, the portable kind carved into bone or stone, wasn't just decoration, but trade branding, a prehistoric logo of sorts. Maybe that carved mammoth figure meant from the western hunters, or a certain pattern of dots meant made by the river people. It's not as absurd as it sounds. Even ancient barter needed reputation. Nobody wanted counterfeit flint when the nearest replacement was 3 glaciers away. As darkness falls, the joint camp comes alive. Fires burn in a loose circle, sending up pillars of orange smoke. Children chase each other around the shelters, their laughter a fragile miracle against the wind. You sit near the traders, watching as one of them exchanges a necklace of bone beads for a pelt so soft it might have belonged to a cave lion cub. The food comes next, a feast by Ice Age standards. Strips of dried reindeer dipped in rendered fat, followed by hot broth brewed from marrow and herbs. Someone passes you a wooden cup, and the steam fogs your eyelashes. You sip, savoring the taste of comfort traded across worlds. Around the fire, conversation begins to flow. You don't understand the words, but the tone is universal. Curiosity, barter, the occasional teasing laugh. It hits you then. Warmth isn't just fire or food. It's this, the act of connection, the fragile trust built in a frozen world. A trade isn't just an exchange of goods. It's an exchange of hope. If you have something to offer, maybe you'll survive another winter. If you share warmth, maybe someone will share it back. Later, you watch as the two groups dance around the fire, stomping, clapping, moving with surprising rhythm. The dance seems to mirror the wind itself, wild and swaying. Maybe it's ritual, maybe just the human urge to move. Someone jokes that it's to keep warm, and everyone laughs, though the truth hides inside the humor. As the flames burn low, gifts are exchanged for real this time, not bartered, but symbolic. A bead here, a strip of dyed leather there, the promise of friendship in a place where survival rarely allows it. Historians still argue whether trade in the Ice Age paved the way for later civilization, but it's hard to see it any other way. Commerce and connection, two things humans have always sought, whether across a glacier or across a screen. You lie back in the snow, gazing at the aurora dancing faintly above, green and blue rippling like the world's slowest heartbeat. Around you, the two tribes mingle, talk, and share warmth. Somewhere a dog curls near your leg, pressing against you for heat. The fire hisses softly, sending sparks up to the stars. You think about how even in a time when everything froze, people still found ways to share, to move warmth across miles, through hands, through stories, through the small miracle of trust. You close your eyes, feeling the cold at your back and the heat on your face. The balance feels perfect, fleeting, human. The trading fires fade into the distance behind you as you travel on with the caravan, the night sky slowly swallowing the horizon. The stars hang low and sharp, and their light seems to shimmer off the snow like countless tiny mirrors. The air feels heavier tonight, older somehow. There's a stillness to it, one that whispers of something unseen. The traders walk in silence now, not because they're tired, but because they've entered sacred ground. You can sense it in the way their steps soften, in the way their breath seems to hush itself. The world may be frozen, but it isn't dead. Every shadow and gust carries something spiritual. For these people, warmth isn't only physical, it's divine. They believe the fire has a soul, a heartbeat that must be fed. To lose it is not just to freeze, but to offend the spirits who gifted flame to humankind in the first place. When the group stops for the night, it's near a ring of stones half buried in snow. You recognize it as a hearth site, old and used by generations. The wind moves through it softly, like breath through the ribs of a sleeping giant. The traders move with reverence now, no laughter, no chatter. They build the fire carefully, layering moss, wood, and dung, striking flint against pyrite until the first spark catches. And then, as the flame grows, the chanting begins. It starts with one voice, low and slow, the words vibrating like the hum of a drum. Then another joins in, then another, until the rhythm takes hold. It's not song in the way you know it. It's more like breathing given form, the sound of ancient gratitude. You feel it more than hear it, a vibration in your chest, in the air, in the frozen ground beneath your knees. Historians still argue whether Ice Age humans had religion as we understand it, but the evidence, figurines, cave art, burial goods, suggests belief was already woven into every spark and shadow. Fire wasn't just heat, it was hope given shape. The hearth was the axis of their universe. You watch as the group drops small offerings into the flames, bits of fat, beads, a feather, even a carved stone figure. The fire snaps and hisses, consuming the gifts one by one. Someone murmurs a story of how the fire spirit once walked among humans, teaching them to cook and warm their homes. But when they grew careless, she retreated into the coals, leaving only her light behind. So we feed her, the storyteller says softly, to remind her we are still grateful. It's both beautiful and terrifying. Gratitude as survival, reverence as necessity. A quirky detail. Archaeologists have found evidence of burned bones and strange circular scorch marks in caves that suggest ritual fires, not for cooking, but for ceremony. Some even think that red ochre sprinkled into the flames symbolized blood and rebirth, turning the fire into a living thing that could be fed and appeased. You can almost imagine the crimson sparks rising into the dark like embers of devotion. Someone pulls you closer to the circle. They smear a thin line of ash on your forehead, a mark of warmth, they say. Now the cold will recognize you and pass over. You smile, unsure if you believe them, but it feels good anyway. Maybe faith itself is a kind of insulation. Historians still argue whether these rituals had structured belief systems behind them or were just spontaneous expressions of awe. But as you sit here, watching the glow ripple across ancient faces, it's hard to call it anything but worship. You can feel it in the stillness, the understanding that warmth itself is sacred, that fire is the fragile thread between chaos and order, between life and death. The chanting shifts now, growing softer, almost hypnotic. You notice a few people tracing patterns in the dirt, spirals, waves, circles, symbols you've seen carved on bone before. The shapes repeat across generations like fingerprints of faith. Maybe they mean the sun or the cycle of seasons or just the act of staying alive another night. No one explains them. They don't have to. A fringe theory, beloved by dreamers more than scientists, suggests that these rituals were humanity's first attempts to speak with the elements, to ask the cold to ease, to ask the fire to endure. Some even propose that ancient people believed warmth itself was a spirit that could be bargained with. Looking into the flames now, that doesn't sound too far-fetched. The fire seems to watch you back, flickering in rhythm with your breath. The night deepens. Snow begins to fall again, thin and slow, each flake catching the firelight as it drifts down like soft ash. You can hear the crackle of the wood, the occasional pop as moisture turns to steam. The chants fade into quiet hums, the kind that vibrate at the edge of hearing. The world narrows to the fire, to its warmth, to the glow, painting everyone's faces gold. One of the elders begins a story about the ancestors, how they first stole fire from the sky after lightning struck a mountain. The gods, furious, cursed the earth with endless winter, but the people kept the stolen flame alive, carrying it in bundles of moss. As long as we keep it burning, the elder says, the gods remember we are not to be erased. You realize that warmth for them is rebellion as much as reverence. Every flicker is defiance, a refusal to surrender to the cold, to oblivion, to whatever fate the Ice Age tried to assign them. The fire burns lower now, settling into a steady pulse of orange light. Around you, people begin to lie down, wrapped in hides, faces turned toward the hearth. One woman traces the spiral in the dirt again before sleeping, her finger moving slowly, tenderly, as if signing her name in the language of the gods. You stay awake a little longer, watching the last of the snow melt before it reaches the fire. The silence stretches on, deep and comforting. You feel the same small awe that they must have felt every night, the realization that something so small, a spark, a breath of heat, could stand against a world of ice and darkness. And maybe you think as your eyes grow heavy, that's what faith really is, not knowing if the flame will survive the night, but tending it anyway. When you next open your eyes, the fire from the ritual has burned to ash. Pale morning light drips into the shelter through a slit in the hide roof, and the air smells faintly of soot and melted snow. Everyone is stirring quietly, faces marked with gray streaks of ash from the night before. The silence is different now, gentler, reflective. Someone hums a soft tune while packing tools into a leather pouch. Today, the group isn't heading out to hunt or trade. They're going inward, to the caves. You've heard stories about them, deep places where the earth stays warm even when the world above freezes solid. You follow as they walk across the valley, the snow crunching rhythmically beneath their boots. The sun hovers weakly on the horizon, a pale coin that never quite climbs the sky. The entrance comes into view, a jagged mouth in a cliff face, ringed with icicles like ancient teeth. The air spilling out from it feels oddly mild, smelling faintly of damp stone and smoke. Inside, darkness swallows everything at once. Someone lights a torch, the flame hissing as it licks the resin-soaked wood. The walls come alive in the flickering glow, rough, curved, streaked with mineral veins that glitter faintly. Your footsteps echo softly as you descend deeper until the outside world vanishes completely. Only the sound of breathing and the crackle of fire remain. Historians still argue why Ice Age humans painted these caves. Some say it was religious ritual. Others claim it was storytelling or record-keeping. A few insist it was simply boredom made beautiful. But standing here, torch in hand, you feel something bigger, a need to capture warmth in a place that never sees the sun. The group stops in a vast chamber where soot stains the ceiling like smoke fingerprints from thousands of fires. The torchlight catches on the walls, and there they are, the paintings, herds of reindeer, mammoths, horses, and bison gallop across the stone in shades of ochre, black, and red. Lines curve with motion, bodies twist with life. You reach out instinctively, but stop short, not daring to touch. The figures seem to breathe with the flicker of the flame. A man kneels beside a small fire pit, grinding pigment between stones. The ochre stains his fingers red as though he's been bleeding color instead of losing it. He mixes it with animal fat and spits to make paint, then begins to work, using his palm, blowing pigment through a hollow bone, tracing outlines by torchlight. It's hypnotic, methodical, ancient. You realize that this is another kind of fire, one that doesn't burn out, but burns inward. A quirky fact: in caves like Chauvet and Lascaux, scientists have found charcoal marks showing that torches were moved rhythmically along the walls, possibly creating a flickering illusion of movement. Imagine it: a prehistoric animation, horses galloping as the flames dance. The first cinema, powered by firelight and imagination. You could almost hear the ancestors whispering, "Coming soon to a cave near you." The artists here work without words, their gestures saying everything. You notice they paint animals more often than people. Some figures are towering, others small and hidden in cracks. One woman adds a row of handprints, stencils made by blowing pigment over her outstretched fingers. The prints glow like ghosts of presence. I was here. I lived. I stayed warm enough to paint. Historians still argue whether these caves were private sanctuaries or communal spaces. Some chambers are so deep and dangerous to reach that it seems impossible they were everyday hangouts. Perhaps only certain people, shamans, storytellers, dreamers, entered here. Maybe they believed the walls were thin places where the world of flesh and the world of spirits touched. The temperature inside the cave hovers just above freezing, but compared to the outside, it feels luxurious. The firelight ripples on wet rock, making it look like the paintings themselves are sweating. You sit near a small fire pit, feeling heat seep into your palms. Someone passes you a torch, and for a moment, you become part of the ritual. Light-bearer, witness, participant in a ceremony thousands of years old. A fringe theory suggests that cave art wasn't made for humans at all. Some anthropologists think it was for the spirits of the animals, to coax them back each season, to honor them for their warmth and meat. In that sense, painting was a form of prayer, and the cave a cathedral of survival. You find yourself believing it, if only because the quiet here feels too sacred to be coincidence. The torch sputters, and for a moment the chamber plunges into darkness. The silence presses in, heavy as the stone itself. You can hear your own heartbeat echoing off the walls. When someone relights the torch, the painted bison seems to leap forward, alive again for a brief instant. You wonder if the artists ever came here alone, using the dark to talk to their fears, or to the spirits they thought lived in the rock. Maybe they painted not to be remembered, but to feel less alone. The air smells of smoke and minerals, tangy and grounding. You run your hand through the dirt floor and feel the warmth trapped just below the surface. Even here, the earth holds on to a little heat, like a secret kept for those willing to dig deep enough. Historians still argue whether art began here in Europe or earlier in Africa, or perhaps in places long erased by time. But the urge to make marks, to say I was, feels universal, ancient as the flame. Maybe warmth itself inspired it. When the fire made shadows dance on the wall, people wanted to capture them, to hold that fleeting moment of motion forever. Someone begins a low chant, the same one you heard during the fire ritual outside. The sound echoes through the cavern, folding in on itself until it becomes a vibration that you feel in your bones. The painted animals seem to move again, not just because of the light, but because belief itself animates them. You feel the air pulse with energy, heat from within stone. Eventually, the group begins to leave. They douse the small fires with handfuls of snow, steam rising like spirits ascending. You glance back one last time. The walls fade into shadow, the animals receding into sleep. The flicker of the final torch catches the handprints once more, and for an instant they seem to wave goodbye. You emerge from the cave into the blinding brightness of snow. The air bites, cruel and clean, but after the heavy warmth inside, it almost feels like waking from a dream. Someone beside you exhales a long plume of white breath and says, "The spirits are satisfied." You nod, though you don't fully understand. Maybe satisfaction is just another word for surviving another day. As you walk back toward camp, the wind carries faint echoes of that chant from the cave. You can't tell if it's real or memory, maybe both. You pull your hood tighter and smile slightly. The warmth of that underground fire still clings to you like a heartbeat beneath your skin. By the time you return from the cave, night has settled again, a deep, bruised blue sky heavy with frost. The fire in camp burns low, coals glowing like the eyes of something ancient and patient. Everyone moves quietly now, their motion slower, thoughtful. It's the middle of another long Ice Age winter, and you can feel the weight of it pressing not just on your skin, but on your mind. The cold isn't only outside anymore. It's crept inward. You sit near the embers, pulling your cloak around you. The world feels small, one patch of warmth in an ocean of endless night. Someone adds a piece of wood to the fire, and it flares briefly, pushing shadows back just far enough for everyone to see one another's faces. They're worn, hollow-eyed, but calm. That calm is its own kind of armor. Historians still argue whether humans in the Ice Age suffered from long bouts of isolation-induced melancholy, what we'd now call seasonal depression. The evidence isn't written in journals, but in their settlements. Long winters spent in tight quarters, firelight as the only clock, stories as the only therapy. It's easy to imagine moods turning brittle like the air outside. You shift closer to the fire. Its crackle becomes the only sound, a soft reminder that you're still alive. One man sits beside you, sharpening a flint blade not because it's needed, but because motion keeps him sane. Another woman hums a song that's barely there, just a thread of melody winding through the smoke. It's soothing, hypnotic, and sad all at once. A child asks, "Why is the sky so cold?" The adults chuckle gently, but no one answers directly. Instead, an elder begins a story, something about the sun being a great fire trapped behind ice, waiting for spring to melt its prison. It's myth, sure, but also medicine. You feel your chest unclench a little as you listen. Stories, like fire, feed the mind's warmth. Mainstream evidence suggests that communities survived winters by building not just physical defenses, but mental ones. Rituals, games, shared humor. Archaeologists have found small carved figures that may have been toys or charms, perhaps used to distract restless hands. You imagine them now, someone sitting by a dying fire, turning a tiny mammoth figurine between their fingers just to remember that life could be gentle too. A quirky theory even claims that laughter evolved as a defense against cold stress, an involuntary way to release tension, to shake the body, to generate a bit of heat. Maybe every Ice Age joke, no matter how bad, was literally life-saving. You picture a hunter slipping on ice and grumbling, "Should have invented socks," while everyone else tries not to laugh too loudly in case the gods are listening. Still, the nights stretch on. In this endless dark, time feels like melted wax, slow, formless, always dripping, but never done. You begin to understand how the cold didn't just test the body, it rewired the mind. Some adapted through imagination, inventing rituals and dreams to fill the void. Others learned stillness, meditation before meditation had a name. Historians still argue whether these long winters sparked the human sense of introspection, that strange, inward-turning awareness. With no fields to tend or wars to fight, people had time to think, to remember, to wonder. The Ice Age may have birthed not just tools and art, but thought itself, the first internal fire. You watch a woman by the far fire tracing patterns in the dirt with a stick. Circles again, always circles. Maybe she's just passing time, or maybe she's drawing her memory of the sun. You start to notice how everything in this world is cyclical. Breath, day, season, warmth, cold. Even despair comes in loops, cold enough to break you, warmth enough to rebuild you. The wind outside whines, finding its way through every gap in the shelter. The sound is ghostly, like a flute being played by the earth. The child whimpers, and the elder reaches out, tucking them closer under a pelt. You feel that small gesture ripple through the group, comfort shared by proximity. Humans have always known this. Warmth multiplies when divided. A fringe idea suggests that huddling together didn't just conserve heat, but altered human psychology, encouraging empathy, cooperation, even language. After all, if you spend enough nights pressed against the same people, you start needing words not just for survival, but for connection. Maybe language itself is just the voice of warmth refusing to die. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the fire's rhythm fill your senses. The crackle becomes a heartbeat. The orange light pulses through your eyelids, steady as breathing. You can almost feel yourself sinking into some shared trance with the others. The Ice Age taught humanity how to dream collectively, how to find meaning in monotony. When you open your eyes again, the stars are visible through the roof flap, sharp, cold points of light. Someone whispers that those are the souls of their ancestors, frozen in the sky, but still watching over them. You wonder if that belief comes from loneliness or love. Maybe both. The night deepens. You think about the long chain of survival that stretches behind you, millennia of people staring into firelight, thinking the same thoughts, fearing the same cold, wondering the same what-ifs. The continuity is oddly comforting. Warmth doesn't just live in fire, it lives in memory. Someone passes around a pouch of fermented berries, sharp, smoky, intoxicating. The group drinks sparingly, the warmth flooding their faces. A hunter tells a joke about inventing fur-lined underwear, and everyone laughs too hard. For a brief, perfect moment, the cave fills with something resembling joy. But laughter fades, and quiet returns. The fire dips low, its glow painting the walls in sleepy orange. One by one, people lie down, their breath sinking with the wind outside. You lie back too, staring at the smoke curling upward. It moves like thought itself, spiraling, drifting, dissolving. Historians still argue whether humans truly understood death in the way we do now, or if they simply folded it into the rhythm of winter. The bones buried in ancient graves show care, flowers, ochre, tokens of affection. Maybe they didn't fear the end as much as we do. Maybe they saw it as just another season, another sleep. The fire pops softly, and a few sparks drift upward like tiny souls joining the stars. You watch them fade and think, maybe that's what all warmth really is, a brief, bright refusal to stay dark. You pull your furs closer, the last of the heat settling deep in your chest. Around you, the camp breathes together, the sound almost like a lullaby. The cold waits outside, eternal and patient, but for now your mind is quiet, steady, warm. You wake to the faintest sound, a rhythmic tapping, steady as a heartbeat. At first you think it's a dream, but when you sit up, you see a small group gathered near the fire, working with quiet precision. They're building something. The glow of the coals dances on polished bone and stone tools, illuminating faces furrowed with focus. The Ice Age wasn't just an age of endurance, it was an age of invention. Every day demanded new ideas, new ways to outsmart the cold that refused to quit. You crawl closer, curious. The tapping comes from a hunter shaping a strip of reindeer hide into what looks like a shoe, or at least the Ice Age version of one. He's sewing the edges with sinew, pulling the stitches tight with his teeth. The sole is lined with dried grass, an early insulation trick that would later save generations of frost-bitten toes. When he finishes, he holds it up proudly. Warm, he grunts. You reach out and feel it, light, soft, yet sturdy, the prehistoric prototype of the boot. Historians still argue which group first invented complex clothing and footwear, but they all agree it changed everything. Warmth went mobile. No longer bound to caves or fires, humans could push deeper into the tundra, chasing herds and exploring lands the cold once forbade. Ingenuity became the new fire. Nearby, another figure bends over a strange contraption, a frame of wood and sinew covered with stretched hide. You realize it's a snowshoe, a simple but brilliant design that distributes weight across the snow so your feet don't sink. The inventor stamps it down proudly and grins at the results. You can't help but smile. The Ice Age, for all its cruelty, was the best workshop humanity ever had. A woman by the hearth fans smoke from a small opening in the roof. The air clears, and you notice something clever. She's placed flat stones around the fire pit to absorb heat, turning them into primitive radiators. At night, they'll be tucked into beds to warm the furs. You think of your modern hot water bottle and realize you're looking at its ancestor. A quirkier discovery in real archaeology backs this up. Ancient people may have used hollowed-out bones filled with hot ash as portable heaters. Picture it, someone walking through the snow, clutching a glowing bone like a thermal flask. It's both ingenious and a little absurd, the kind of invention born from desperation and brilliance in equal measure. You glance at the roofs of the huts. Thin curls of smoke escape from small holes. A basic chimney system. It's crude but effective, proof that even when humans couldn't invent comfort, they could engineer it. Smoke no longer filled the shelter. Eyes no longer burned. People could sleep without coughing through the night. Progress was slow, but each spark of innovation was a victory against extinction. Historians still argue whether these improvements came from individuals or collective trial and error. Was there one Ice Age genius out there, the Leonardo da Vinci of mammoth hide engineering? Or was invention simply born from shared necessity? Either way, you can almost hear the conversation. What if we stitch two furs together? What if we burn dung? It's warm and we're already surrounded by it. You laugh quietly. Even prehistory had brainstorming sessions. As the day unfolds, you help reinforce one of the shelters. The framework is made of mammoth ribs, lashed together with rawhide. It's solid, but not draft-proof. A man hands you a bundle of moss, instructing you to pack it into the seams. The moss smells faintly of earth and pine, and when pressed tight, it seals the gaps perfectly. Nature's insulation, renewable, biodegradable, and, best of all, free. You take a step back to admire the finished structure. It's surprisingly elegant. Curved bones, layered hides, a low roof to trap heat. Inside, you can already feel the difference. The air is warmer, softer. The Ice Age didn't have architects, but if it had, they would have worn reindeer boots and smelled of smoke. As evening approaches, you notice a group of people working on something unusual. Long, narrow wooden planks with grooves carved underneath. They tie strips of hide to them and slide them experimentally over the snow. You blink, realizing what you're seeing. The first skis. Someone falls almost immediately, prompting laughter from the rest. "Still faster than walking," one of them mutters, brushing snow from his beard. You chuckle. History may not record this as the dawn of winter sports, but it's definitely the dawn of human mischief in motion. A fringe theory suggests that these innovations weren't just practical, they were expressions of identity. Tribes might have decorated their tools and clothing not just for aesthetics, but as early trademarks, signaling skill and culture. Maybe warmth was the first luxury, and craftsmanship was the way to show off. You picture one Ice Age influencer saying, "Oh, this, hand-stitched seal hide, limited edition." As night falls, you gather again around the fire. The new chimney draws smoke smoothly upward, leaving the air clearer than before. Someone tests a newly built lamp, a shallow stone bowl filled with animal fat, a wick made of twisted moss. The flame burns steady, golden. The room fills with a soft, buttery glow. You lean closer and feel the gentle heat against your cheek. It's not bright enough to read by. Not that there's anything to read, but it's enough to see faces, to remind you that the dark doesn't win entirely. Historians still argue whether this kind of domestic firelight changed human psychology, whether living in lit spaces allowed imagination to thrive. Maybe it did. You can imagine stories becoming longer, dreams more vivid, plans more ambitious. When darkness no longer swallows you whole, you start to wonder what lies beyond it. The new shelter creaks softly as wind passes overhead, but the air inside stays still. Warmth has become a crafted thing now, something earned through invention and care. The family beside you drifts toward sleep. The mother tucks heated stones into a fur cradle for her baby. The father adjusts the smoke flap so the embers don't die out. You can smell fat and ash and faint sweetness from stored berries. It's the scent of survival turned domestic. You settle near the fire, letting your mind wander. You think about how each small idea, boots, chimneys, lamps, built a bridge toward modern comfort. How humans learned, inch by inch, to make the cold obey. Even now, thousands of years later, every radiator hum and flickering bulb is just a whisper of this same victory. The fire pops softly, sending a tiny spark toward the roof vent. You smile, imagining the people of this camp as innovators, engineers, artists, all rolled into one. Necessity wasn't just the mother of invention, it was its midwife, nurse, and motivational coach. Outside, the wind moans but never breaches the walls. Inside, the warmth feels earned, deliberate, human. You close your eyes, the orange glow fading behind your eyelids, and think, Survival isn't luck, it's design. When morning comes, the camp feels different, lighter somehow. The wind has calmed, and sunlight pours weakly through the hide flap like liquid gold diluted by frost. You stretch under the furs, feeling the lingering warmth of the night's fire, and beneath that, something softer still, the warmth of people. After so many nights spent chasing physical heat, you're beginning to realize that the real furnace of the Ice Age wasn't the fire. It was human connection. Outside, voices murmur. You step into the brightness, blinking at the snow glare, and see them. Families clustered near the main hearth, their bodies turned instinctively toward each other. There's laughter in the air, faint and crackling like kindling. The hunters are joking as they carve meat. Children are chasing each other in little clouds of frost. It's the sound of warmth made social, the invisible insulation that keeps the cold at bay even when the fire dwindles. Historians still argue whether early humans had clear notions of friendship or love, but the evidence, burials with care, shared food, the echoes of community spaces, makes it hard to deny. Cooperation wasn't optional, it was oxygen. The cold taught people that solitude kills faster than hunger. You move closer to the fire where two women are stirring a pot together. The broth smells rich, layered with bone and herbs. They lean in, whisper something, and laugh. That laugh is contagious. It cuts through the gray air like sunlight. You grin without meaning to, feeling a warmth that has nothing to do with the flames. A man sitting nearby is telling a story, gesturing with exaggerated drama. You catch enough of the rhythm to know it's meant to be funny. Something about a hunter who mistook his own shadow for a bear and ran screaming into a frozen pond. The listeners howl with laughter, slapping their thighs. For a few seconds, they forget the frost on their eyelashes, the cracked skin on their hands. Laughter becomes a campfire of its own. A quirky archaeological tidbit backs this up. Some Ice Age sites contain circles of sitting stones arranged too perfectly to be random. They might have been gathering spots for conversation, storytelling, or even singing. Imagine it, a prehistoric cafe, no coffee, just company and shared heat. You can almost hear the chatter. So, did you see those mammoth tracks? Unreal. You crouch beside the fire, rubbing your hands together. A woman passes you a small carved object, a pendant of bone, smooth and polished. It's shaped like a tiny human figure. For luck, she says softly. You hold it close, feeling the faint warmth from her palm still clinging to it. It's a gift, but also a thread, a proof of connection. Historians still argue whether these personal ornaments were purely decorative or carried emotional meaning. But this one, you can tell, means something deeper. It's her way of saying, you belong here. In a landscape that tries constantly to erase you, belonging is the ultimate warmth. As the day stretches, people work together with practiced rhythm. One group repairs hides, another cuts wood, another teaches the children how to make simple snares. Every movement, every shared glance carries a quiet choreography. Survival has turned into teamwork so seamless it's almost invisible. Later, when the sun begins to dip, everyone gathers around the central fire. The orange light pools across the snow, painting faces gold and amber. Someone passes around a pipe carved from bone, filled with dried herbs. They take turns inhaling and exhaling, smoke swirling upward in lazy ribbons. The air fills with a smell both sweet and earthy. It's not intoxication they're chasing. It's togetherness, a ritual perhaps, or just an excuse to linger close. A fringe theory suggests that early humans created social warmth through ritual touch, hand clasps, shared furs, synchronized dancing. It wasn't just cultural, it was biological. Skin-to-skin contact helped regulate temperature, but also emotions. You smile at the thought that cuddling may have been humanity's first psychological therapy session. You sit close enough to feel the warmth of the bodies around you. It's not romantic, though maybe it sometimes was. It's simply communal. The comfort of heartbeat against heartbeat. The reassurance that you're not alone in the storm. It strikes you that warmth has layers. The fire warms your skin, but people warm your spirit. Someone begins to hum again, a low wordless melody that spreads like ripples across the group. One by one, voices join in. The harmony grows, simple and haunting, a lullaby for the frozen earth. You close your eyes, letting the sound wrap around you. This isn't music for performance. It's music for survival. Every note a small act of defiance against silence and fear. Historians still argue whether communal song served a practical purpose, perhaps synchronizing work or scaring predators, or if it was simply a side effect of shared existence. Either way, it feels deeply human. The need to turn breath into beauty, to make warmth audible. The song fades into murmured talk. Someone is teasing the young hunters about their clumsy skiing attempts. Another imitates the voice of a mammoth god demanding better aim next time. The group bursts into laughter again. It's small, silly, perfect. And as you watch them, something clicks into place. The Ice Age wasn't survived by the strongest hunters or the best tool makers. It was survived by the people who could stay together. Cooperation was the ultimate technology. Warmth wasn't a possession. It was a relationship. A child falls asleep against their mother's side, their tiny hand gripping the edge of her fur cloak. The firelight flickers across their faces, soft and unguarded. The others gradually settle, lying in overlapping clusters. You can hear breathing sink again, the same quiet rhythm that has carried humanity across millennia. You realize how this simple act, huddling, sharing, touching, will ripple forward through time. From cave dwellers to crowded hearths, from families around fireplaces to friends beneath neon lights, the instinct remains. Draw close. The cold outside the body may change shape, but it never disappears. You stretch out, the pendant still in your hand, warm from your grasp. Around you, the fire hums low, the group's murmurs blending into soft, steady peace. You think of all the versions of warmth, fire, food, laughter, love, and realize they're all the same thing wearing different faces. The night deepens, the stars glittering faintly above, and for the first time, you don't dread the cold. You understand it now. Without it, warmth wouldn't mean anything at all. The days begin to stretch again. The air still bites, but the light lingers longer on the horizon. You notice it first in the way the snow gleams differently, softer, less cruel, and in how the wind feels less like punishment and more like breath. The Ice Age, for all its arrogance, is starting to loosen its grip. You walk beyond the camp, boots crunching through a crust of melting frost. Tiny rivulets trickle between stones, murmuring like secrets long buried under ice. The world is thawing, not quickly, not entirely, but enough for hope to sneak in. Historians still argue when exactly the last great glacial retreat began. Some say about 12,000 years ago, give or take a few shivers of time. But numbers don't matter much out here. What matters is this: the cold, once absolute, is learning to let go. You kneel and touch the ground. Beneath the thin crust of snow there's mud, real sticky, fragrant mud. It clings to your fingers, earthy and alive. You can smell something green, faint but undeniable. The world's first whisper of spring? Back at camp, the change is stirring everyone. The fires burn smaller now. Fuel is less scarce when the air itself softens. Hunters return with damp boots and smiles, reporting rivers breaking free of ice. The days of endless hunger are easing, even if only a little. A group gathers near the ridge to watch the sunset, a golden smear stretching across the melting plain. For the first time in months, you can see color that isn't white or gray. The snow glows pink and the shadows turn violet. Someone sighs and another murmurs, "The world is breathing again." You nod. It's not poetry, it's observation. Still, change brings its own anxieties. Some wonder if the melting will flood their hunting grounds. Others fear that the animals, those dependable woolly providers, will move north, chasing colder pastures. Warmth gives life, but it also takes away old certainties. Historians still argue whether humans celebrated the thaw or feared it. To them, stability was safety. A world in motion, even toward gentleness, meant unpredictability. But adaptation had always been humanity's quiet superpower. The people you walk among now simply adjust, just as they always have. That night, a small feast forms. The hunters have caught fish from a river newly awakened, sleek, shimmering things, as if carved from the very idea of renewal. They roast them over a modest fire, the skin crackling, the scent filling the air. When you take a bite, the taste is fresh and clean, almost shockingly alive. You can't help but smile. Someone laughs that they'll miss mammoth steaks. Someone else teases, "Maybe the gods will give us smaller animals to chase. Less work, more meals." Everyone laughs. You think about how humor seems to return with warmth, as if sunlight itself tickles the soul. A quirky discovery from real archaeological digs. Pollen trapped in ancient layers shows how tundra became meadow. Meadow became forest. Within a few thousand years, the world turned green again. Imagine the shock. People who had known only endless white, suddenly seeing trees, flowers, bees. No wonder myths of paradise and rebirth began to bloom at the same time. You watch the flames flicker over the new greenery sprouting near camp, the first shoots of grass poking through melted patches. A child crouches to touch one, eyes wide. "It's soft," he whispers, as if the earth itself has become magical. And maybe it has. As the night settles, you feel the temperature hover just above freezing. The difference is subtle but profound. For the first time in ages, your breath doesn't freeze mid-air. You can move without every step sounding brittle. You realize how much of human behavior was sculpted by the cold, how warmth now feels like both blessing and mystery. Historians still argue whether this climate shift directly birthed agriculture, but the timing lines up perfectly. As ice retreated, humans stayed longer in one place, discovering that seeds grew when dropped in mud. From there, civilization would sprout like those first blades of grass. You're witnessing the quiet prelude to everything: homes, cities, futures. A fringe theory even claims the memory of the Ice Age survived in myths of floods and lost worlds. Atlantis, Noah, the endless rains. Maybe our ancestors couldn't forget the moment when the earth itself melted. You look at the rivers swelling nearby and think, yes, that would leave an impression. The air smells new now. Moist earth, thawed moss, wood smoke blended with something floral. You find yourself breathing deeper, greedier. The warmth makes you restless. Maybe that's why people begin wandering farther, exploring beyond the known valleys. Curiosity, long frozen, is thawing too. You join a small group trekking to a hill overlooking the plains. From there, you can see the vastness of it all. Patches of green breaking through white, the distant shimmer of unfrozen water, and the silhouettes of animals migrating across softening ground. The mammoths move slower now, even they seem unsure what comes next. A herd of reindeer follows behind, hooves splashing in meltwater. It's the sound of the world restarting. You stand there for a long time, hands tucked into your furs, face warm from sunlight that finally carries a trace of heat. Around you, the others murmur quietly, almost reverently. This is what hope feels like, you think, not a shout, but a slow, quiet thaw. Back in camp, the fire burns lower than usual. People linger outside longer, talking, stretching their hands toward the faint warmth of evening instead of flame. The air is still cold enough to bite, but the difference between need and choice is everything. Warmth is becoming optional, not absolute. That night, as you lie beneath your furs, the sound of dripping water replaces the usual moan of wind. You listen to it, slow and steady, a lullaby of melting. The roof creaks as ice slides off, and somewhere a small stream gurgles like laughter. The cold isn't gone, not yet, but it's retreating. You drift to sleep thinking about how every civilization that would ever exist owes its life to this moment, to the earth learning mercy again. The warmth you've chased across the centuries is no longer something to hoard. It's becoming something to share freely. And in that thought, you feel the first true comfort of all. Maybe warmth was never meant to be conquered. Maybe it was always meant to be found. The world, once white and endless, is now a patchwork of thaw and bloom. You awaken to the sound of dripping water and the unfamiliar hum of insects, the smallest choir of life tuning up for the first true spring in generations. Your fur cloak feels too heavy now. You peel it back and realize that your breath no longer clouds the air. The Ice Age has finally loosened its grip. You step outside, blinking at a brightness that feels almost tropical by comparison. Patches of green spread across the valley, timid but determined. Pools of meltwater shimmer like fragments of sky on the ground. The horizon is dotted with birds, actual birds, migrating back from whatever southern paradise they've been hiding in. Their cries are sharp, joyful, defiant. You smile. The world smells alive again. The camp has changed too. The people are lighter, both in clothing and in mood. Fires burn smaller. Nights are easier to survive. Children play without constant scolding to stay near the warmth. You see someone sitting apart, carving a piece of antler into a delicate comb. Another hums softly while plaiting grass into rope. These are acts of leisure, an idea that barely existed when survival consumed every waking hour. Historians still argue whether the end of the Ice Age marked humanity's first real sense of comfort. For tens of thousands of years, every thought revolved around fire, food, and warmth. But now, with the cold in retreat, people begin to notice other hungers: beauty, curiosity, belonging. The human brain, freed from frostbite and famine, starts asking new questions. You join a small group walking toward the river, where the ice has cracked into drifting plates. They're laying out strips of hide to tan in the sun, a smell both foul and familiar. A woman laughs as she sprinkles herbs on her skin. claiming it keeps insects away. You recognize it for what it is, the first version of sunscreen. Crocodile dung worked better, you murmur to yourself, remembering that earlier joke from Egypt's far future. Progress is relative, you suppose. One of the hunters gestures toward the water. "It's too warm now," he says, frowning. "The mammoths moved north." You glance up, following his gaze to the distance where the shaggy giants trudge toward the horizon. The sight fills you with both wonder and sadness. The very creatures that shaped these people's lives are fading from their world. The Ice Age didn't just thaw ice, it melted eras too. A quirky archaeological discovery tells us that as the world warmed, new animals moved in: deer, wild horses, even early cattle. Humans had to adapt again, learning new hunting methods and, eventually, new diets. Some even began staying near rivers to gather plants, experimenting with seeds that accidentally sprouted near campfires. The first farmers, though they wouldn't call themselves that, for many centuries. You can almost hear one of them mutter, "Why chase food when it can grow itself?" You sit by the riverside, trailing your fingers through the cold water. The sensation feels electric after so many nights of numbness. Behind you, the sound of laughter drifts on the breeze. Someone is telling a story about the time their ancestors slept inside a reindeer carcass to survive a blizzard. The others groan, laugh, and toss handfuls of grass at him. It's morbid humor, yes, but also remembrance. Jokes are how humans make peace with what nearly killed them. Historians still argue whether the end of the Ice Age brought an end to that primal fear of cold. But one look at modern humans shivering when the thermostat dips a few degrees, and the answer is obvious. The fear never left. It just hid behind layers of convenience. Even now, warmth equals safety, comfort, love. Every flicked light switch, every heated blanket, every cup of coffee on a frosty morning is a subconscious echo of this ancient gratitude. We survived. As the sun climbs higher, the camp seems transformed. The fire burns low and lazy. People stretch in the open, soaking up sunlight like animals, relearning what warmth from the sky feels like. A few wander off to explore the forest's edge, curiosity replacing caution. You follow, listening to the crunch of damp earth and the hum of new life. A fringe theory proposes that the return of warmth reshaped not just the landscape, but the human heart. The long winter taught people closeness. Spring taught them independence. Some left the old tribes, setting off alone or in smaller groups to find their own valleys. Others stayed, building new kinds of communities, more stable, more creative. Out of this balance of togetherness and freedom, culture itself began to bloom. You reach a small clearing where a young couple sits weaving flowers into their furs. The petals are pale purple, trembling in the breeze. You watch them quietly, realizing that for the first time in human history, warmth is not a fight, but a feeling to share. Love, as we now call it, may have been born here, when survival no longer meant hoarding heat, but offering it. Back at camp, smoke rises from a single hearth, no longer a desperate bonfire, but a controlled domestic glow. Children toss handfuls of grass onto it, watching the sparks leap. Like the stars, one says. The elder nods slowly. The same fire lives up there. You smile at the poetry of it, unintentional though it may be. The air turns dusky and soft. You can hear frogs for the first time, tiny voices announcing the thaw's victory. Someone beats a rhythm on a hollow log, and soon others join in, clapping, stomping, moving. It's not the frantic dance of freezing bodies around a fire anymore. It's celebration. You join them, laughing, spinning, feeling the world shift beneath your feet. This isn't survival now. It's joy, practiced into muscle memory. Historians still argue whether this warming period inspired the myths of rebirth that would later populate every civilization. The phoenix, the flood, the spring goddess. But it makes sense, doesn't it? After so long in darkness, the return of warmth would feel like resurrection itself. Humanity stepped out of the Ice Age not just alive, but awake. As night approaches, the air remains gentle, like breath instead of blade. You sit by the embers, thinking about how far you've come, from frozen tundra to thawing earth, from huddled terror to laughter by rivers. The cold shaped humanity, but warmth defined it. Every invention, every kindness, every story, born from the same primal longing, to stay warm and stay together. You lie back and look at the stars. They no longer seem cold and distant. They shimmer softly, almost benevolently. Maybe they've always been this way, you think. It was just the frost between you that made them look sharp. You close your eyes, letting the night settle over you. Somewhere in the distance, water flows, steady and sure, the song of a world learning how to breathe again. The next morning dawns bright and still. The cold hasn't vanished. There's still frost glittering on the edges of grass, but it no longer feels hostile. You step outside the shelter and draw in a deep breath. The air is sharp, yes, but also full of scent. Wet soil, wood smoke, something faintly sweet and green. After so many endless winters, this is what renewal smells like. You walk through the camp, which now feels more like a village than a survival outpost. The shelters stand in a loose circle, their hides patched and clean. Thin wisps of smoke rise from small hearths, each one tended not out of desperation, but habit. A woman kneels by the fire, stirring what looks like a mix of berries and fat into a stone bowl. She hums softly as she works. Behind her, children chase each other around the mammoth bones that once formed the camp's borders. Life has stopped whispering. It started singing. You sit near the central fire and warm your hands. The flames flicker gently, not roaring the way they did when the wind howled across the plains. There's no longer a need to battle the cold. The fire is a companion now, not a shield. You realize that warmth has changed meaning entirely. Once it was survival, raw, essential, unthinking. Now it's comfort, ritual, memory. Historians still argue whether humanity's sense of nostalgia began here, when warmth became something to remember instead of chase. The stories passed down from these people would echo across ages. Tales of the great cold, of mammoths and endless snow, of the nights when fire meant life. You can almost hear the first storytellers shaping those memories, turning suffering into wisdom, frost into legend. The tribe gathers as the day brightens. They're building something new, a frame of wood and hide stretched to dry in the sun. It's not a shelter, it's a raft. The rivers, swollen from meltwater, have become highways to unexplored lands. Warmth no longer holds them in place. It drives them onward. One man tightens a sinew rope and grins. "The world is open again," he says. You can feel his excitement like heat on your skin. A young woman stands beside you, eyes fixed on the horizon. "The ice will never come back," she murmurs, half hopeful, half afraid. You want to tell her the truth, that it will, in cycles, in ages, that warmth and cold always trade places, but you stay quiet. Let her dream. Humanity, you realize, has always needed to believe that The worst is finally over. The group prepares to leave tomorrow, carrying tools, food, and embers from the fire sealed inside a clay pot, a portable sun. You think back to the beginning, those trembling sparks struck from flint and pyrite, guarded like treasure. Now, generations later, the fire is being carried not as necessity, but as tradition. A quirky find from archaeology. Clay balls and small pots with soot traces from this era suggest exactly that. Containers used to transport live embers between camps. The flame itself became heirloom and heritage, passed hand to hand through centuries. It's almost poetic, the continuity of warmth as both invention and inheritance. As night falls, you sit again by the fire, surrounded by soft laughter. Someone tells a story about how humans once stole fire from the gods and have been sharing it ever since. Someone else jokes that the gods probably wanted them to keep it because it's too much work to maintain. The laughter rolls through the camp, deep and easy. Humor, the oldest kind of defiance, still burns bright. Historians still argue whether fire ceremonies persisted into the next ages. But echoes of them linger in every culture. Candles at vigils, bonfires at midsummer, the tiny flick of a lighter before a celebration. The Ice Age may have ended, but humanity never stopped gathering around flames to remember who they are. You watch the tribe as they settle for the night. Parents pull children close, friends share blankets and whispered jokes. The fire crackles softly, reflected in dozens of tired eyes. You think about how far they've come, from fear to familiarity, from mere survival to the luxury of peace. And maybe you realize the Ice Age didn't just shape their tools or homes, it shaped their hearts. It taught them empathy, patience, and the quiet knowledge that every spark of warmth means more when it's shared. Even now, thousands of years later, that lesson endures in the smallest ways. In campfires and conversations, in hugs and homecomings, in every act of kindness that keeps the cold at bay. The flames dip lower, and you watch them curl around the last piece of wood. The light flickers, painting faces in amber and shadow. Someone throws a handful of herbs into the fire, and it flares briefly, sending up a cloud of fragrant smoke. For a moment, it feels as though the entire history of humanity is contained in that single breath of light. Everything that was cold made warm again. You close your eyes and listen to the night. The world hums, a low, contented sound of wind through grass, of water moving, of people breathing in unison. The Ice Age is ending, but its lessons remain. Warmth is not permanent, and that's what makes it precious. The next morning, they'll set off. New lands, new fires, new stories. The ember in the clay pot will light countless future hearths. The fire in their hearts will light every home that follows. You sit a while longer, letting the warmth seep into you, deeper than skin, until it feels like memory itself. You think of all the small miracles that carried humanity this far, the bone huts, the laughter, the music, the hands clasped in the dark, and you realize that warmth isn't just something humans found, it's something they became. The fire sinks lower, its light softening into a steady orange glow. The air feels thick with quiet, warm, heavy, almost drowsy. You lie back on the furs and stare at the embers pulsing faintly like sleepy hearts. The voices around you fade, one by one, until the only sound left is breath and the occasional sigh of the wind brushing over the roof. Your eyelids grow heavier. You can almost feel the world outside slowing down with you, the rivers murmuring, the grass swaying, the last patches of ice melting in rhythm with your pulse. The glow from the fire flickers gently across your hands, and you notice how the light seems softer now, like it knows it's no longer needed. It's been burning all this time, keeping watch through blizzards and silence, and now it can rest. You let your thoughts drift through the cold plains, the mammoth hunts, the bone huts, the songs around the fire. Every image fades slowly into the next until all that's left is a feeling, warmth, deep and steady. You realize that the story was never really about the Ice Age at all. It was about you and everyone who ever searched for comfort in a harsh world and found it together. Outside, dawn begins to glow faintly beyond the horizon, the first blush of another new world. You breathe out once more, long and slow. The cold will come again someday in one form or another, but for now the world is warm and you are safe, and that's enough. Sleep now. Let the fire inside you hum low and steady. You've earned this warmth.